spooky folks out there. Welcome to another Horror Nights. I do have to say, it's a little bit lonely being the lonely stoner now with only me on here, not having Victor Sin coming on, telling him all my crazy adventures in the horror world and explaining all these sick, twisted movies that will probably make his gut wrench. Hello, Barbara. How you doing tonight? Happy to see you. We're doing a couple of movie reviews. I talked to a few independent directors. They've sent me some films. Let's talk about them, right? I mean, first one I want to talk about, I'm an anthology film person. I'm glad that you are back. I really am. I love seeing, the people that have started with this since day one. And you've definitely been one of those people, Barbara. You've definitely been one of those people. But that's the thing. I'm a big fan of anthology films. Always have been. Probably since I watched, Tales from the Hood. I was a fan of that kind of stuff. And I got to screen a movie called Actor's Curse. And it's a small, it's a Phil Herman film, which I've been doing a lot of different reviews of his films. And I'm also going to be actually producing and help produce one of his upcoming films, and we can talk about that later on another episode. There is some cool stuff happening on the horizon in the movie world. But meanwhile, he was showing me another film that's about to get released, and he asked for critics or people to that do these things to watch it. So I screened it. I watched it twice, like I watch all of them twice, and I have to say, oh, thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate that. That is great. Thank you very, very much. No, you are the best, honestly. You really are. It's fans like you that keep things like this going, or people even want to do it, to talk about it. I really do appreciate the support. I really do. It feels really good. And to know that people enjoy Horror Nights, enjoy listening, and enjoy movies, enjoy cinema. It's not always about being right or wrong here on Horror Nights. It's about just exploring ideas and talking about it. And this movie did just that. It was a funny kind of B movie-ish. I won't say, it's just high-end production, but it has a lot of comedy in it mixed with a lot of horror. I wrote notes on this one because it had different segments. The first one was very but whenever you can get on, Barbara, I do appreciate you checking it out. I really do. There was a segment with a greedy boss, your typical boss that was kind of messing around with women and treating people wrong. They ended up setting him up. It's showing different stages of Hollywood, a different, how Hollywood is, the kind of the sleazy side of it. And so, I I was watching this one, and this one actually had a scene where, the bosses they cut his dick right off. And in some movies, more or less, they'll actually show this kind of happening. This was one of the ones where they do just cut it right out and pull it out or bit it off. It was rather satisfying. There was also another one where a woman, she's like she's greedy. She's a greedy businesswoman. She doesn't really, take shit from anybody. And it shows the underbelly of the industry and kind of how that all it really is, how cutthroat it is. There's no friends. There's also a very cool and this one was kind of cool too. This was it showed like somebody hired a dying, not really dying, but a starving director to do a film. The one before was even better because the woman was the director, and she like was playing this game of chess with all these actors until they all just like ended up dying or killing themselves due to depression because one she bankrupted and one she did this. But the next one was like the opposite. There was a guy looking for work, really looking to direct a film. He needed the money. He calls an old fling, and this old fling sets him up with the film that people want to see made, and it's a documentary in South America about vampirism. And he's like, "There's no vampires in South America," and he goes on and on about it. But eventually finds out that there's a lot of ties. I will definitely tell Victor you said hi, and I got some news about Victor for everybody that I am going to share about next week. But yeah, I'll get to that after this. But yeah, it shows that there was this huge correlation between vampires and history, and through the whole whatever hundreds and hundreds of years, vampires have been in power and just using humanity. And then there was one other one that came in with this guy with this, like, he had a burn scar face, and he ends up messing and trying to get revenge on the girl that did it, and he ends up getting kind of, he gets what he deserves. And in between, there's a narrator and everything. Like I said, it's an anthology. So, you got a bunch of different short horror movies, all of them kind of B-ish. But I would definitely give this a 4 out of 5 film. It was entertaining, and I liked that everything kind of was about the entertainment industry. It was about being an actress or an actor and what it's like. And, you can almost see some of this Hollywood stuff style happen because people are sleazy. We've dealt with wrestling in the past, and I could think of a bunch of promoters off my hands that would use and abuse talent. Not in horrific ways, but just in subtle ways because it's the nature of the industry, and that's kind of what this was showing that and some of them do and take it further. Some of them really take advantage. And I could see that happen in Hollywood all the time, honestly. But no, no, it didn't go back to Vlad. It went to, like, weird, like, people that helped settle the country, settlers and other people, and they were just like vampires. It went all the way to, like, people in the Vatican. The Vatican had vampires living in it too. But no, Vlad Dracul, or the original Dracula, Vlad the Impaler. That's supposedly a true story. Like, you can go visit his castle. And a lot of the superstition of Dracula was based on Vlad. He had very unique ways of killing his prey. His enemies. I mean, he would impale them. He would put their heads to spikes. Thank you, Barbara. You have an amazing day as well. Hope everything is great. But he also was known or was told or heard of drinking his enemy's blood, doing all sorts of ritualistic shit to scare. And maybe he was a vampire. Who knows? Vampires are the one thing that I never discredit, because there could be some mutation of humanity out there that needs blood to survive. I don't know. Might be in some dark depth part of the earth. But no, we had a very interesting project unknown this week with somebody called Zool, and she's not the Ghostbusters Zool, but it's kind of tied to it. And as you know, Victor Sin brings on and runs that show, and he's been nice enough to have me be part of it, even though I kind of kicked him off of Horror Nights. And episode went great. I know some people think Vic gets a little, horned up and sexual out there, but it honestly isn't. It was really actually more professional than I've seen some of the professionals do it. And it turned into a great conversation. We went over the time limit, but she was talking about things that were also entering my realm. And that, yes, no, there is a place. And it started getting to my realm. She does horror conventions. She does other things. She's done some movies, modeling, music videos, so forth. So I invited her on the show, obviously Horror Nights, and she's asked to have Vic come on the show. So, I mean, first of all, I always accommodate my guests. Second of all, I mean, it's because of Vic that she's coming on. I mean, Vic found this girl. And I'll be honest, I was impressed. She has horns. Any girl that has real demon horns, I'm like, let's go. Oh, vampire bats are real. They do drink blood. There is such things. They don't typically attack humans, but humans don't really typically live where they are anyways. And plus, bats usually hunt at night or drink at night, which most people are indoors. But animals, oh, they get it. And bats, I mean, there is a lot of superstition, but a lot of it has some reality to it. Speaking of reality, though, I left reality for a little bit, watching another film called VCR Willie. Now, I saw this film being advertised on Facebook. It was being advertised as analog dread. I'm a big fan of analog horror. I love analog kind of horror movies. I used to, watch some of these like channel whatever different YouTube channels over the years that have made analog short horror films and weird stuff like Don't Look at the Moon. I like Dreamcore, Liminal Spaces, all of that stuff. I think it's fascinating. Gives a creepy atheistic. And I also like watching films that are made in older format. Because of the grain, because of the imperfections and everything, it makes it scary. You can't see it. Everything crystal clear 4K. It's not like that. So this movie was filmed, and because I talked to the director, it was filmed on a Super 8 camera, a 2001 Super 8 camera. So it has a very retro feel to it right off the bat. Second of all, the movie just starts off. Now, it comes in 3 different formats: VHS, which is $100, DVDs, which were 20, and then USBs, which were like 20 as well, I think, or 15. I don't know. All limited runs, like 500, 1,000, and something else. VHS being the most limited run. I did not go with the VHS. I don't have a VCR, but I did go with the DVD, and I might go back for the VHS. I'll be honest, because it's a very cool thing to have. But it comes in, a DVD case, whatever, and I plop it in, and the movie just starts off right away, and it's all first person footage, and basically it's showing this guy's nightmares, and this guy's having these nightmares, and every nightmare gets recorded onto a tape, and he keeps this scene, and it just keeps, you're in a house, and there's a lady screaming, then you're out of the house, it goes to another segment, you're going back into the same house, different people. And there's weird people screaming, dancing, people in your face, going, "I didn't do it," and just all these different characters that show up in each segment. And they do something that I thought played into the scare factor a little bit, and that was play with the tone in the audio. With it being an older format, the audio isn't perfect, but on some parts it just gets raised up that you almost get jump scared by the audio. And I thought this was genius. It made it interesting. It wasn't so uniform and tonal. The whole movie itself, I thought, was just really well done. And I know that he's going to be doing more. This was just tape 1, so I'm really interested to see where this is all going to go. You know, as he kind of explores this world of VCR Willie. How crazy will the dreams get? How bad will the nightmares be? Nobody was really like stabbed or anything. This was all just like creepy stuff. You're sitting there in a kitchen and you're watching some guy with a weird smile and he's drinking water, but not out of a cup, but out of like a pot, talking about he might be diabetic. And it's just like really dreamlike. And I'll be granted, I watched that one twice too. The first time I watched it, it was kind of late at night. So I was kind of honestly dozing in and out anyways. Second time I got kind of stoned and watched it again, and it was during the day. And I even let my kid watch it because it doesn't really have that hard, and it doesn't have any gore, any hardcore violence or anything like that. There's no sexuality, there's no penises getting bitten off, there's none of that stuff. Okay, it's very pretty mundane. It's really just, about that analog kind of style horror. So I let him watch it. He said this was the most weirdest and messed up movie he's ever seen because it was just all over the place. The sound, the people, the craziness. It wasn't your typical movie. I myself am a big fan of that. I'd give that 5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I really thought it was done well. Um, But the only thing I can criticize for all of these movies that I've been watching, all these independent films, I've noticed one thing when I buy these DVDs, and that's the sound isn't that good. I do have to crank it up, almost 20 decibels higher than I do on, watching something from a major distributor or a major production, which makes it a little bit. My grandparents worked for the movie industry for years, and I see a lot of movie stars. What kind of like? What do you mean? Do I have any stars? I don't have any stars in my house. Have I met movie stars? Yes. I didn't work in the industry. I mean, but I go to a lot of conventions and such, and I've talked to a lot of horror people. But that's awesome being like having them in the industry. Were they from California out in that way? But no, I do recommend people honestly giving VCR Willie a go. If that's your thing. Some people are gonna say it's boring. Um, and I get that too. Like I know Skinnamarink, people didn't like that movie. Yeah, no, definitely. And so that's the thing, people didn't like Skinamarink at all. They thought it was kind of mundane. It didn't really deliver. It didn't deal. This was much more boom boom than Skinamarink, and it honestly I thought was just done proper. It was the right amount of what the fuck times. This is kind of creepy times. This is unsettling. And that's kind of what I like to watch. A little bit of unsettling, a little bit of creepiness, a little bit of weirdness. I try to watch a lot of different movies now. It's not just the mainstream movies that I hear about or everybody sees because I've gone through them all. I've watched a lot of them. More than probably most because I'll wake up and watch a movie, or I'll go to sleep and watch a movie, or during the day I'll watch a movie. You know, um, so when it comes to the independent scene, I'm kind of a little bit new though because I got all these directors I'm meeting and all these different people, and they all have these different films I've never seen. They're not on Tubi. Oh, that's awesome. Fox is a great company. That's really cool. You must have like they must have had like a lot of memorabilia and stuff too from the studios or being around the people. And it's funny, like when you're in the studio, you're in the company, everybody's just very like mundane and nice and kind of just normal. But then you're outside, it's like everyone's a superstar. Yeah, I figured California, that's the place to be, honestly, for this stuff. Really is. But yeah, I don't mind what I was saying. What was I saying? Is that I seeing these independent directors, I get a lot of different films now. I also been, following some of the Facebook people that they tell you don't watch these movies; they'll never be the same again. And I'll be honest with you, some of these movies are pretty brutal, for different reasons. Like I watched the movie Playground the other day. For those that want to watch it, they can find it on Tubi. I don't really recommend watching it unless well, I'm going to tell you about it, and then you can make your own decision. But I wouldn't just go and watch it. If you ever seen the movie Kids or Eden Lake, it's something similar to that. Both kind of combination where you have a bunch of people. It's almost like a documentary. They're documenting the kids' day, and there's just a lack of parents, lack of discipline, lack of everything. And in this one, we see bullying, we see kids getting hurt, being bullied, and that's hard to stomach as is. But it plays into the scene basically that violence is just normalized because by the end of the movie, the kid that's bullied, they end up taking a toddler, and these are kids. They end up taking a toddler out to the train tracks and just beating him to death. No reason, no rhyme, no other reason for it except just that. And they don't glorify it. They don't cut in. It's a very wide angled shot, very far back, so you can almost see it. Well, thanks for coming back, and that's awesome about the memorabilia. Memorabilia is the best. I have not gone to the Actors Guild. Maybe next year. I would like to though. I would like to get out to California some more. Being on the East Coast, I don't really get out to the West Coast much. But it was disturbing. The fact is, seeing violence is one thing, but when you see kids getting hurt, that's another. And then when you see kids causing kids violence, that becomes a little bit disturbing. Especially when you see like a young kid killing another kid that's younger for no rhyme or reason. So I will say that it left a kind of a disturbing image in my head. It didn't freak me out or anything, but it was definitely like one of those films like, damn, that's bleak. That's cold. And I find that with a lot of foreign films, and I talked about it many times, that they do have these bleak, cold endings. That they don't, have these Hollywood blockbuster style. There's a, hero in the mist and they're going to save the day kind of feeling. And foreign horror, there's always those bleak endings. Speak no evil. They end up killing the parents and cutting the girl's tongue out. Where in the American version, maybe the mother comes and saves the day. And we see a little bit of that. Or we see, more of a hero, less of a bleak ending. Eden Lake, I thought, was done well as, too, where, you do have these kids that are just doing whatever they want to do. And at the end, the parents kind of stick up for them. And you kind of wonder, would that happen here too? Or what would this happen? But you don't even get that chance. You see what happens on the train tracks, and then the kind of movie ends. And it's just like, oh, okay, we're just left with the fact that real violence exists and violence happens on almost a normal basis. Regardless, it's one of those things that's a constant. Right? People are getting robbed, people are getting hurt, people are getting cut, people are getting killed. No, it's definitely an art house film. It wasn't like it wasn't for the fact of killing children. It was for the fact of they wanted to show, and this is a common trope in a lot of I've seen foreign films, that the kids are not being supervised, or don't have any parents, or don't have any role models, or don't have any supervision. And it's a scary thought when you have a bunch of kids supervising themselves. But I read, from what I read, the director really wanted to just show that, violence gets normalized because of, when people get bullied, they get desensitized almost, and it becomes this horrific cycle of violence. And it gets passed on, and it's very hard to break, and you don't even know it's happening until it's too late. And again, it makes you think, how can we prevent things like from this happening? Bullying, anti-bullying laws, and keeping better eye on our children, and doing and trying to be better role models, and so forth. But being a parent, these kind of movies are a little bit more creepy to me because they can really happen. Another one I saw recently was The Table, a Spanish film. That movie was just based off all anxiety. Something terrible happens, a tragic accident. The guy drops his child and he goes through this glass table, and the most worst things that could happen. And that's not the scariest part of the movie, though. The scariest part of the movie is, the wife is out. He's got his brother coming into town, and this dude is trying to clean everything up, running back and forth, doing all this stuff. And he has to keep cool. He doesn't want to tell his wife that the kid's dead. He can't tell his brother. Like, it's just it turns into a whole kind of night of charades. And it just plays on the anxiety, the anticipation of, how are these people going to act? How's this wife going to act when she finds out her son is dead? And it was an accident, but the accident doesn't matter. The fact that the incident happened. And the wife does come home, and the husband still plays it off. Oh, he's sleeping. Don't wake him up. And all this, oh, I cut my hand. And it goes on. And it gives you this, like I said, this kind of sense of anxiety. You can feel the tenseness. I usually don't get that with a lot of films unless they're really psychologically driven. A lot of the slasher films just don't do that to me. You know. But again, these are films that are kind of like, well, that one's new. And I am looking, we talked to Cam, the guy that directed Baskin. We talked to him, and he actually was asked to direct the Turkish Coffee Table, which would be kind of a reboot and remake of that. in his own style, and I'm interested to see what does with that or where he's brought in that, because he has such a interesting directing style as is. I watched his movie from Baskin all the way to Ciara, and it's two different kind of films and two different stories being told. That's cool. Charles Bronson's the man, and so isn't Chuck Norris. Honestly, like Chuck Norris is one of probably the best fighting actors the world's ever seen. Really can't deny that from Chuck. And Charles is Charles. I mean, he's had some of the greatest, in my opinion, just movies out there for cinema. Like I said, it's not. I enjoy horror. Horror is my primary, but I've watched a lot of other cinema: action, comedy, western, sci-fi, science fiction. Whatever it is. Cinema, cinema. There's a lot of great cinematic movies and moments that just isn't horror. The Brave Little Toast is a great movie. That's an underrated movie. I think those earlier animations were much more story driven, even like Fievel Goes West, American Tail there. You know, they they put that, these movies were meant to tell stories, Land Before Time, all that. I think nowadays, when you want to get into that realm of movies, they try to really sell the characters more than the storyline. They want you to fall in love with the character, so you buy the plushie, you buy the action figure, you buy the toys, you buy the merch. Where before it was just about the story. Brave Little Toast, I don't remember having any Little Toasted toys or anything, but it was a great movie. I wanted the VHS. And that's the difference, I think, with the marketing for children's movies nowadays. Now it's about selling that character so they can get spin-offs and all this, make a video game, sell it off. Another movie I watched recently I got into was Funny Games. Now, Funny Games is an interesting movie, another bleak movie, but it's a 1997 movie, okay? It came out in 97, and then this is the cool thing, and this doesn't always get to happen. The director came back in 2007 and remade the film, and this time he remade it for English. And it's basically, shot for shot. And it was a crazy film with the fact that, again, you got two people kind of just invading a home for the weekend of the rich and famous, and you got a family and they're held captive, and these people got no cares in the world. They're weird, they're awkward, they're doing horrendous acts all night long. They're killing people, people are getting killed any which way. Kids aren't off the table, anything goes. But what the scary part, not the scary, but the eerie part is the way that these guys conduct themselves. They're very proper. They have manners. To them, it's a funny game. And it's similar to something like Strangers or something like that, but a little bit more less Manson and more like upper scale. These guys, they were like part of these wealthy community. They fit right into it. But definitely like a psychological mind game, because again, the outcome isn't gonna be good, but you gotta still sit there and watch it. And kinda know how it might even turn out, but you still gotta sit there and watch it. And I think that's how the hardest films, when you can figure it out what's gonna happen, but you still gotta sit there and watch it, and the anticipation of how this is gonna play out. Again, like the coffee table, how is this guy gonna tell his wife? What is the wife gonna do when she finds out her son, got decapitated? All of these things. And that's where the real kind of, realistic kind of dread comes in, because it's like, if you put yourself in those shoes, how would you handle it? What would you say? What would you be able to do? His mind goes all over the place. I'm not going to give spoilers, but, you can see the erraticness of what happens when, tragedy strikes. And again, I do enjoy the foreign films. I do watch them in subtitles because I mean, unless they're dubbed, sometimes I will watch the dub version if they're dubbed, but I have no problems watching the subtitle versions of films because I do believe that, foreign films are just done differently. I'm a big fan of the French extremities films and all of those, movies like Martyrs. I know they're not easy to watch, but they're done differently. They bring a different level of horror to the horror world. American horror is great too. We have a lot of different things. We have had slashes. We had the '80s slashes. Okay, they defined a whole generation of horror. People are still using slasher format. We had paranormal stuff going on. We had like paranormal all the films that they did there, and you have all the other ones that we have, like The Conjuring and different things like that. Okay. And those have made their mark. But I mean, look at like J horror. J horror came in and you know, Americans took a lot of that and remade it. The Ring, The Grudge, Dark Water, Camera, all these different ones. What was my other favorite one I used to like? One Missed Call. I really liked One Missed Call. And I still and in all these I prefer the Japanese version over the American version. I just think they're done better and more creepy. Although The Ring, I'm not gonna knock The Ring. I thought The Ring was a very good movie, especially in its time. Again, using that kind of dread, you watch a tape. Tapes are creepy to me. Tapes could have anything on it, and you could find it anywhere, especially when you went to a video store. You could be bringing home something, and I don't know about you, but how many times did you rent a movie and all of a sudden it ain't that movie? Somebody taped over it. Either it's a home video, it's some dirty movie, or it's something else weird. It's happened. Believe me, I've rented like, famous, not famous, but popular movies. And they'd have like freaking, I'd have to bring it back. Somebody taped over like Ricky Lake over it or something stupid, back in the day. Or it has a home video. Some people even did that because there was ways of being able to record over VHS. And if you brought that back to a store, it is rewinding it. They're not watching every tape. And by the time the next person gets it, then they know about it. And that's the thing. That's how the curse kind of spread. Like this, somebody watched a tape. They found it in a cabin. Tape gets watched. Nobody knows about it. So the next people watch it. Nobody knows about it. Again, this is pre-internet time too. Nowadays you watch a tape, you go viral with it. Hey, I just watched this tape. This didn't happen back then. Everything was word of mouth. Word of mouth makes everything a little bit more scary too. I think the old way of living made things a little scary. Not having the cell phone by your side, not having all these maps, not having all this information at your fingertips, having to actually figure shit out. Was kind of more of the task. You get stranded in the middle of nowhere, you had to pull out a paper map, try to read that rather than just, type in your MapQuest or call this number or call OnStar, whatever the hell you do. There's so much more surveillance now in the country. There's so many more cameras everywhere. Cameras can be seen on, red lights and such. Well, we didn't have that in the 80s. People could go missing and there would be no evidence of that. Even scary was times before, DNA. And you just gotta remember, at one point they weren't even fingerprinting people, So I mean, criminals and criminal behaviors and killers, they've existed and been able to exist for many, many years. Maybe it's a little bit harder now, but they're still out there. You still hear people go missing. You still hear these crazy stories about, right now you're hearing about bodies being found across Texas. There might be a serial killer in the mist. You don't know. And, Hollywood, they capitalize as much as they can on this kind of stuff. Some of it they don't get into. You got to remember, Hollywood is very commercialized. And then that's, I think, why I'm kind of leaning into the independent too. Because Hollywood will only touch certain stuff, certain subjects, certain movies. And then other stuff, they're going to just be like, no, our investors ain't going to like that. Like that guy said, that's disgusting. I wouldn't watch anything like that. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that, Playground didn't, get produced by a major company. Somebody had to go out and do this. Art house films, such like that, it's not for the mainstream. It's for some of it's very extreme, some of it's for a purpose. Some of it's for someone's vision. They want to put out a story. Somebody wants to just tell a story. Somebody wants to just fuck up your day, make your mind fuck. Somebody wants to put out the most shocking movie they can. I mean, I think that's why people put out like Serbian film. They just want to see how far they can make your mind go insane. What would you be able to withstand viewing on a camera? And let's see if we can push it to the limit and then take it a little bit farther. And I think that's what he did with this. Does the movie have a good plot? No, the plot sucks in that movie. The scenes suck in that movie. The whole thing kind of sucks, but it's just a shock factor. It's shocking. You're seeing things that are visually, oh my God. And then if you really stop and think about it, you're like, oh my God, somebody actually had to write these scenes out. Somebody actually had to direct these scenes. They might have had to do this scene 10, 20 times. And it's kind of like, wow, this is kind of fucked up. Somebody really wanted to get this story out of this message across. And why? Why would anybody want that out there? But again, there's movies like that all over the place. In the indie department, I think, is where you're going to find a lot of that stuff because you don't have these Hollywood rules. You don't have these mainstream, guidelines. So you can get away with a little bit more artsy stuff. You can get a little bit away with the more of the gruesome, the gore. The ratings can be a little different. You're not going into a movie theater. People are buying it or streaming it somewhere. Now, granted, you can't go on YouTube with that either. But it seems Vimeo is better than YouTube when it comes to being able to put up full like horror movies. I see a lot more people doing that. They must have different rules and regulations for their violence and so forth. Although you would think cinematic violence should fall under cinematic violence, I'm pretty sure it does not, because I've gotten flags on even like pro wrestling, which is weird because it's scripted violence and it still gets flagged or made 18 plus or other restrictions. But like I said, I'm always on the hunt for watching films, and I talk to a lot of filmmakers. I seek them out. I go into groups. I see who's making films, who's got upcoming films, and are any of them topics or interesting films that I would like. Again, like I like anthology films, watching many stories, whether they coincide together or not. I like to, watch a multitude. I have a short attention span, so 15, 20 minute short films are great for me. You put 3 or 4 of them together, and I got a full feature, and I'm enjoying it. Tales from the Hood is probably one of my favorite movies. It's classic. It's got everything you want. A little bit of humor. It's got horror. It's got the hood. It's got it all. And things like that. I kind of that being one of my favorite of the best of the anthology series is that I watched. I kind of put everything up and compared to that. But there's others that are out there, that I enjoy a lot. Even like the VHS series is really good, I thought. They've gone a little wonky in the later years with Halloween was kind of and the sci-fi one was eh. But the other ones, 1, 2, 3, all those the 80s ones, the 90s ones, those were good. They were interesting. And you could kind of skip and go of what, segments you want to watch. There was another one that was put out by John Carpenter. He did one. A lot of these, I find them on Tubi or stuff. And, I watched them. George Romero did one. They all the horrors end up doing these like kind of like anthologies at some point, But I personally enjoy it because, like I said, I like to see what people can do with a short amount of time telling a scary story. I like short story format. I like 20-minute movies, shorts. Not to say that sometimes I want more and sometimes I wish they would make it into it. Like Baskin. He made his first film into a short and then he turned it into a feature later down the line. And honestly, I watched the short after watching the feature, but if I had watched the short first, I would have wanted that, to see that as a feature. I would have been like, yeah, I want more of this. Give me more. Give me more. But not everything should be made into a feature. Sometimes it's best to just have less. The less is more theory or, way of working is better. Um, and sometimes you need to add more because it's just not enough, or you want to add a little bit of detail, or you go back and do that. You build a world that looks cool, and now you want to like incorporate more into that world and expand the universe out. Similar, kind of like Star Wars, like George Lucas. He put out the movies, and then he just kind of went to town filling in gaps, holes, sequels, prequels, everything. And it got a mind of its own, to the point that almost every person in that film, alien, everybody has a character, a backstory somewhere, something. The ships, everybody, it all has something. Every pilot, they all have names and where they're from. And it got transcended into games, card games, video games, everything. The universe of Star Wars. And in some ways, the horror universes do the same thing. They're just not on the grandest scales. But I mean, Halloween has its own universe, right? Nightmare on Elm Street has its own universe, and they're doing a great job expanding that now with, Welcome to Derry. I thought they did an amazing job taking what we've read from Stephen King, taking what we've already seen from Stephen King's movies, that have been made, and really bringing everything kind of together, because this wasn't a Stephen King production. He didn't put that out himself. So somebody did a really good, lining up the dots and making movies work together, and connecting The Shining to it, to this, to the Green Mile, to the Dark Tower, to everything. As a fan of Stephen King, I was impressed because it's a huge universe. He's rewritten a lot of Maine, in my opinion, taking places and just changed locations and made it his own. And for someone to document it all and connect the dots like that, because they are all connected, it's not only genius, it just made for a great season one. I mean, that was everything you can want out of a horror show. And maybe that's the future of these horror shows on the TV shows, is going to be taking movies and making spin-offs. I mean, I remember at one point American Horror Story was really dominant. I loved American Horror Story. I thought it was really good, but eventually I think the seasons just got weird. They didn't get so scary. Casting got kind of bigger, but they weren't bringing anything to the table, in my opinion. I mean, after maybe Cult, Apocalypse was kind of weird. I did like it that they brought back the witches, and they kind of brought everything together. And then New York, New York was weird. The spiders. I did like the camp, but I also didn't like the camp. Like, the camp was good, but the camp was weird. It was good, but it was weird. Like, it could have been this crazy good slasher, but then it got kind of supernatural and weird, and then it kind of got good. I don't know. It has its moments. But those first seasons were great. Even like Asylum was really, really good. The circus one. I liked even Roganok, breaking down that barrier of having like a show within a show, I thought was really cool. I know a lot of people hated that one, but honestly, also Kathy Bates made that, her over the top performance in that movie was great. In the show. And so, like I said, there's a lot of different variations and varies of horror. Um, Whether it's now TV horror, movie horror, short film horror, indie horror, major promotion horror, a lot of different things out there. And I think it's a good time to be a horror fan. We got a lot of great movies coming out this year. There's a new Scream movie coming out, right? We got that. New Terrifier movie coming out. New Stream movie coming out by the producers of Terrifier. If you haven't seen Stream 1, please go and watch that. Michael Levy did an amazing job directing that. They are the Fuzz and the Lens, they're the directors of Stream Terrifier 2 and 3, but they came in for this, and Damon Leone actually does the makeup and FX, and it has a cast that you just wouldn't believe. Everybody from Tim Curry to Jeffrey Combs. Amazing cast on that movie. It's like the rat race of a horror. They brought everybody they possibly could in that was at that whatever. I think they filmed it at a convention or whatever, but they used cameos of everybody, and it makes it so much fun. You're like, oh my god, there's that person, there's that person, and it's got some nods to older horror in other films. It's really worth the watch, and I can't wait to see also what 2 is going to bring on that. I did hear that they have one of the Impractical Jokers. I don't know if you guys like that show. I love that show. I think it's hilarious. They're having some of those guys do the writing for the movie, which a good horror has elements of comedy, horror. You want to feel all the emotions. You don't want to just feel scared for 2 hours. That's no fun. You need to laugh a little, let your guard down, and then it scares you more when the scares happen because your guard's been let down. You think you're safe. And that's how they get you. That's how a movie will get you. Think you're safe. But that's the hard part of it all though. The timing of it. How do you time a movie so you can, get all of this in there without it becoming a campy movie, without it becoming too goofy, without it becoming a parody. You need really good, comedy writers blended with really good horror writers, and that's what I think they're bringing into this one. I'm really excited to see what they do with it. Again, it's based about a game, people betting on lives, and probably real, something like a Red Room, but on a bigger, platform, more known. People were watching this take place in a bar. Um, the ending scene was quite enlightening if you haven't seen it yet. But do check it out. It also has Tony Todd in it. One of his, I think it may even been his final role. Or one of them. Great actor, great cameo into it. Michael Levy, Jason Levy, all did an amazing job with that. You got David Thornton. Art the Clown is one of the killers too. There's 4 killers in it. It's fun. Fun movie. Definitely recommend it. It's out on Blu-ray. You can buy it. You can watch it on Amazon Prime or stream it. Screamboat Willie just came out today too. Screamboat. That was Fuzz and the Lenses take on the whole Steamboat Willie. As you know, his license for likenesses and stuff kind of expired a couple years ago, last year. So a lot of people came out with movies on scary movies about Mickey. This one has, David Thornton in it again. And I thought he did a really good job playing it. It's a fun movie. It's not meant to be taken serious. I do recommend checking it out. The Steelbook did drop today. You can find it. It's online. I'm a big physical media collector. I like to watch these things when they come out, but then I also like to do other things. What is the number one mistake can a director make that makes a movie look bush league? I mean, the number one mistake, in my opinion, that you could do to just fuck your movie up is to put absolutely no money into sound. Now you could have $1 million camera, get 5 of them. But if your audio sucks and nobody can understand or hear your words and lines, there's really no way to fix that in post edit. Like, you're done. You screwed your whole self up. The sound is always going to be trash. Sound is very important. You want it to be crisp. You want it to be clear. There's not much more you can do. You can retake shots in film. You can reshoot things, but sometimes you can't re-get that audio. So the audio is the number one thing that you need to do if you really want to, perfect a film. I mean, after that would then be like, okay, yeah, use a proper cinematic lens or use proper cameras. But in this day and age, that's not hard to do. Cell phones that can be used as proper cameras. You can get apps on your phone that make your, camera phone even better. You can log it. You can use log colors. You can do all sorts of things now. They're very powerful devices for cinema. But again, they're limited on that sound. You're not going to have a boom mic on your phone. Um, you could try to attach one. I don't know how it would be, but you need that mic. You need that boom mic. You just can't rely off the device's sound. You're going to get too much noise pollution and everything else, and it'll just sound like a home video. That would be what I would think. I'm sure there's other things you can do to fuck up your film, but that is when I've asked at panels and such, that's the number one answer I get. The sound's got to be good. Put your money into the sound. Make sure the sound guy knows what he's doing. Make sure he presses record, because there's been stories of like there was one guy who was talking about a story they filmed for the whole day, and the sound guy never pressed record, so they had no sound for the whole day. Whole day was a waste. Nothing you can do with it. And some of these people couldn't even come back, so it was just like fucked. But that's the thing. I'm not perfect in anything I do. I don't make perfect movies. I don't even probably make good movies. I make short films and a few other things, and I learn as I go. I listen to what people have done and what people are doing. I take that advice. I see what people are doing. I read a lot. I do tutorials. I listen to tutorials. I watch tutorials. And then I take all that plus the knowledge that I have and I try to put something out. And I'm thinking that everything I put out is a little bit better than the last, as it's been tweaked a little bit more. A lot of my earlier stuff ran too long. My cutting wasn't good. I was leaving scenes in too long. I was doing too many boring scenes, mundane things, driving scenes, this and that. So I shortened a lot of them down, edited them up, made it more quick, right to the point. And honestly, I like a lot of what I'm seeing, because again, it's not a feature film. It's an 8 to 10 minute short film. I need people just to watch, be excited, and go. I don't, but that's something I had to learn from A, watching films, and B, just making them, getting feedback, sending them to people, listening to people. I mean, the feedback's important, and you should always really listen. I mean, follow your heart. Yes, that is true too. Do what you want to do, especially if you're not doing it for money. If you're just doing this shit for fun, go out and do whatever the fuck you want. Make an art house project. Doesn't really matter. But if you want the insight to take that movie and to make it into something better, then definitely listen to the people that are doing that. The people that are already putting movies out there or have. And there's a lot of independent directors that are very friendly out there that will talk with you and sit with you, all the people. They'll collab with you. You can ask them, how can I get around this? How can I do this VFX? How can I do this FX? And people are very free with information. They will help you out, talk to you friendly. But it's just a matter of, do you want the advice? Do you want to listen to the advice? Do you want to take the advice? Some people don't. Some people will be like, no, I know what I'm doing. Don't bother me. And so they never change their products. They never change their ways, and their movies are always subpar or mediocre. Other people are putting out movies, they've listened, and then they've changed their whole outlook, and their movies have now become much better, or far better. Movies are only as good as the story can be told. Story can be amazing, but if you can't deliver how to tell the story, then you failed the movie. But there's also multiple ways of telling that story. How do you want it to be? Do you want, if we're telling a simple ghost story, do you want it to be super frightening? Do you want it to be, mystic? Do you want it to have, more fact based and tell a real story about something that happened to enlighten people? Do you want to scare them? Multiple ways you can go with that to do multiple things. So, I mean, that's how I look at it. First, if you're gonna put out some, think about what you want to put out, right? You've written it, you've done it. Think about how you want to convey the message, why you want to convey the message, and then deliver it. And then see what it does. And you might have to edit it, you might have to make edits, you might have to make changes, it might not be perfect, you might hate it. There's stuff that I put out, there's films that I have out there that I absolutely hate that I made. I'll still take credit for them, but I hate them still the same. And sometimes I kick myself in the ass, and I'm like, damn, I could have made this so much better if I just, didn't release it now and waited, 2 more days when I would have learned how to do such and such and this and that. But then other times you just gotta kind of let it go, because otherwise you'll linger on it and dwell on it, and then you won't actually get anywhere with it. And that can be another problem. You don't want to be stagnant. You don't want to be sitting on your own works of art, complacent to put it out. Because then you're not going to put anything out. And similar to the podcast world, you can sit on that perfect episode 1 forever, but if you don't put it out there, you're never gonna know if, where your career can take you in podcasting. You might never hit that home run perfect episode, but you'll never know unless you try. And most of the time, you're gonna fail the first time. My first episodes were trash. I still think they are now. I'm definitely haven't perfected this game, no near. Or I'd be Chris Van Fleet or somebody important. Like, I'm still a novice in the game, but you learn. You learn how to interact. You learn how to maneuver. You learn how to do different things. You learn how to shorten your time. In my original podcast, I would go like 3 hours. It'd be too long. It'd be me blabbing. Tonight I'll give you an hour. I'll talk for a little bit under an hour, maybe. We're talking horror. It's just me. There's no other guests. There's no reason for me to sit here for 2, 3 hours and blabber along. There's nothing for me to even talk about. And learning that too. Sometimes you don't have to talk just to talk. But I do, like I said, to wrap it all up, I do recommend, checking out Phil Herman's films. I don't know if you can buy them on Amazon. I know some of them are on Tubi. So if you just type in Phil Herman. Other than that, I suggest following on Facebook. Getting a hold of him. Say, hey, I want to check out some of your films. They'll send you like Jack. I think he has like Jacker 1 and 2 and 3. He has a few other anthology horrors that he's made. The one that he's putting out next year is going to be an anthology kind of doomsday movie, which I watched another one he had called Doomsday Stories, which was very interesting. It was like post-apocalyptic kind of horror, which delves into sci-fi, but it also delves into existential dread. It's interesting stuff. But I've been a very big fan of it, and there's a few more movies of his I'm going to check out. But I definitely am enjoyed it. And also the VCR Willie. You can Google that, and it should bring you to the website. You can purchase it right then and there. I honestly recommend buying the DVD. You might not want to drop 100 on the VHS. Yes, he put it at 100 because it's a very limited run, and VHS is kind of expensive, I heard, to make when you do limited. But get the DVD, watch it. You're gonna enjoy that film. You're gonna say, "Wow, this is something different. This is not something that I'm used to. This ain't the same kind of horror that I've seen before." And it's gonna tickle you in a different way. The other films, like I said, you can find Playground on Tubi. Again, watch with your own discretion. It is definitely not for everyone. It is definitely a triggering movie. It might even leave you feeling empty and hollow. But if you can stomach it and stand it, just remember that it is a cinematic film. This didn't really happen. This isn't a documentary. People aren't really dying. Everybody went home at the end of the day. And same thing with the other films. You can find them on Amazon as well. I believe both. You might have to pay for them, but I believe both Funny Games are on Amazon Prime. And like I said, I would watch. Both of them are unique. They're kind of the same, but they have different actors, which I think brought different aspects to these characters and who they were and what their mannerisms were and how creepy they were. Definitely worth the watch. Definitely worth to check it out. But everybody, next week we got Zool coming on. I'm excited for it. Victor Sin's coming back for the episode. If anybody has something bad to say about it, say it now. Forever hold your peace, honestly. Just shut the fuck up about it, because at the end of the day, Victor delivers. He brings in people. He's still doing things. He's still looking for guests. Hate him or love him, he's still good for business. And he still has loyalty. That's hard to find. Loyalty and a hard worker. You're not going to find that often. So yes, he'll be back next. We will be back next Tuesday, not Wednesday, and he will be back on along with the one and only Zool. If you didn't, you can check out the paranormal side of her. And you can find that, I believe it is on my YouTube as well. And it's also on Project Unknown. She had some very, 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 very interesting stories about the paranormal world, seeing ghosts, seeing all sorts of things. I was even in shock in some of the things she was saying because it's some of the stuff that movies are made out of. And plus, she has horns. Again, I'm never going to get over the horns. People with horns, man. That's where it's at. But thank you, everybody, for watching tonight. I hope you all stay spooky. Check out some of the films. Let me know what you think. And if you have a weird, fucked up film you know that you've heard about or want me to check out, let me know. We're more than happy to watch it. As long as it's not like fucking real snuff or anything crazy. We're not going to get into that. I'm not going to have FBI knocking at my door at 2 a.m. But cinematic movies, there's a few out there that are kind of, whew. But have yourself a good night, everybody. We will see you next week.
Like and subscribe.